Hello everybody and welcome to Addicted here on the Constructive Criticism YouTube channel. I'm Heezy. I am the co-host of Constructive Criticism, the owner of Heezy Game Media, and I am here to talk to you about a very special deck to me. And by special I mean like it's literally my invention. It's close to my heart. We're going to talk about Gem Bloodstorm. And we had a previous video that we deleted on this account about this deck because I knew that one day I'd return. So, with that being said, let's go to the deck. This deck plays in the main deck 2 Infernal Grasp, 1 Valki God of Lies, 4 Prosperous Innkeeper, 2 Tangled Florahedron, 2 Meathook Massacre, 1 Shadow Skull Smashing, 1 Inscription of Ruin, 2 Fable of the Mirrorbreaker, 4 Topiary Stomper, 1 Sorin the Mirthless, 3 Esika's Chariot, 4 Binding of the Old Gods, and then 2 of each of the 5-drop Planeswalkers for this deck, Lolth and Wrenn and Seven. We have 2 Blood of the Snows and 3 Storm the Festival of Spain, but don't let that trick you. We do have another Blood of the Snow on the sideboard, and we have often had another Storm the Festival on the sideboard depending on the matchup. Right now that's not the case, but let's talk about the main deck. This deck has a ton of different types of ways to interact, whether it be Meathook Massacre, Shadow Skull, Valki, the Grasp, the Ruins, just the Blood in the Snows, things like that, the Binding of the Old Gods. There's at every part of the card you get to do multiple things, whether you want to interact or play to the board. Those are kind of your options. If we looked at the most recent episode of Constructive Criticism, I won't go too deep into it, but I talk about why I believe that this deck is good right now. And that was a huge part of it. One of the huge things that this deck gets to do is it gets to be a mid-range ramped control deck. This is my favorite style of deck. If we look at just the lands, for example, we have a lot of really fun lands. We've got one of the pathways, right? So 1 Blightstep Pathway, 1 Darkbore Pathway, 1 Cragcrown Pathway, 1 of each of the snow lands, 4 of the tri-lands, and then a ton of snow lands and some spell lands. The reason for that is you need a lot of basic lands for Topiary Stomper. You need a lot of forests for Binding of the Old Gods. And then you need the right number of sources for things to just happen, right? So, like, a really good example is, like, Spencer, why the Sulfurous Mire? Well, it's probably better than the 4th, and I know this because I played it, the 4th Snow-Covered Swamp, because for a long time there were 3 Fable of the Mirrorbreakers in this list. I don't even know that it is wrong to have red sideboard cards in this list due to the number of cards that you play. Also, the fact that we really did want the Shadow Skull Smashing as both a land that produces red and just another removal spell that requires double red, by the way, meant that there needed to be concessions in the overall 75. Now, one of the questions that I always get with this deck is Blood in the Snow. Blood in the Snow, how does this work when you have so many non-snow lands? Well, the truth is that it's not that hard to get to 3 to get to Topiary Stomper, and in the very late game, it is really easy to get to 5 to get to 1 of your Planeswalkers, and because of that, you don't need some of the other snow cards, and you don't need to go all out on snow lands. It is a pretty huge piece. But I want to talk about some of the key cards here, and they are Blood in the Snow and Storm the Festival. Mono Green is one of the best decks. Even Boros is one of the best decks. But Boros can actually be fast enough where the Blood in the Snow is not good. Boros is one of those matchups where you really needed cards. So, we have Ray of Enfeeblement in the sideboard. We've got Warchief to bring in. There are tons of things that you get to do to adjust your deck depending on the type of game that you are playing. And this deck gets to adjust its game quite a bit. But that being said, Blood in the Snow still gets to completely change the formula of the game. And also the fact that you have a Blood in the Snow and that your opponent might not know that means that they're going to play into it more often because it's a 6-mana Wrath where you get to stabilize the board, whether it's with a Stomper, whether it's with some of your small creatures like Innkeeper and things like that, while your opponent continues to play into the board because they have to, because you gain a ton of life. and then you get to completely reverse card them, as it were. The next and most important card is, in fact, Storm the Festival. This is a ramp deck. Storm the Festival actually acts as both a ramp spell to put things like Stomper or Binding of the Gods or other lands into play, as well as a win condition to put Chariot, Planeswalkers into play. Overall, this card has been one of the best cards in the deck and is definitely the reason that I built this deck. Fable the Mirror is one that I just want to mention really quickly. It is one of the best cards in Standard. I actually think that there is a world in which you play 4 of this card. You will all outgunned. The thing is that people are really prepared for this card, and while it is really good with Stomper, while it is really good with the tokens from Wrenn and Seven, while it's even really good with Chariot, where you get to make a Chariot to sacrifice if you want to, or a Valki, or there's tons of ways where just activating this card ends up winning you the game. The most common being like a Warchief out of the sideboard. There's a lot of things that get to happen. Overall, I mentioned the Chariot play. That has actually only happened once. Now that I think about it, it's not very good. I think that it was actually only good because I got a Meathook Massacre trigger. I think that this deck has a ton of potential. The fact that Fable the Mirror Breaker gets to be a hit off of Storm the Festival, plus you get, the backside of Valki. Originally, I had this deck built where I was only playing the snowlands that Binding of the Old Gods could get, but then Stomper came into play. Now Valki gets even better. And for a lot of times, there were times where I played 2 Valki. The problem is that because of the fact that Fable the Mirror Breaker is so prevalent, people are just playing things that kill Valki as the creature, so you want to draw it as a creature in the right times, and then it makes it harder to kind of decide how to play that card. Another one is Sorin. We notice that they only have 3 Chariots. That's because Sorin is taking the place of the other Chariot. There was just a number of times where people just are prepared for Chariot. You just want to split your differences here. And Sorin was the other 4-mana card because of the way that you've got your deck built with these 2-mana ramp spells where it made the most sense. Overall, I'm pretty impressed with this deck. Some of the most impressive cards for me have been Toski out of the board. Nissa is a new one that I've been trying out. Because you have so many land drops in this deck, one of the things that we want to do is try and put different things into play pretty easily with her, or just continue to pressure the opponent or ramp you with her plus ability. This could be so many different cards. I actually don't even think that it would be crazy to have things like another Sorin in the board, or or even like an Arlen. I think that there are tons of things that you could do in this spot, as well as it just being another Storm the Festival. The sideboard has a ton of work to do, and I even have versions of this deck that don't play red, that only play black, that get to play kind of a lesson learned package. So for me, this deck is one of the most versatile decks that I have been working on in Standard. I believe I have a great win percentage with this version specifically. So I'm talking about this. People have asked about it since my last podcast. And I believe that this is one of the best decks in Standard that only my podcast listeners know about. I think that it has an ability to pivot really well. It has a great late game. It has a great mid-range game. And it has everything that you need to get Mythic and Standard. I've already talked about the sideboard quite a bit. I think that there are tons of things to do. Tangle Trap and Raven Enfeeblement get to come in against Jeskai. Duress also gets to come in against Jeskai. Outland Deliberator gets to come in against control end decks that are heavy on enchantments and things like that. Workshop Warchief gets to replace your Planeswalkers and some of your expensive spells when you're trying to go against some of those aggro decks. And then Toski also just straight up wins games when people do not expect it. Blood in the Snow coming in against Monogreen is pretty great. Those are the things that I would say about this deck. I think this deck is super fun. It's one that I would definitely recommend, and I encourage you to check it out as we look at, Jund Bloodstorm, the Heezy Game Media original. Thank you everybody so much for watching. Leave a comment, Let me know what you think, and we'll see you guys on next time with another deck here on Constructive Criticism's YouTube channel.